Hey friends, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast. It is your host and friend, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I'm super glad you decided to drop in here with us today because I have a very special guest and longtime friend, Gretel Adams. Hey, Gretel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, I just am so glad. I know that y'all are really like beating a path. It's that time of year when frost is around the corner. So I know you're super busy, but I'm really glad you're here. And I think it's kind of fun to talk about what we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to introduce LaVon Wyatt Adams to the world via the podcast waves. So Gretel, I really want to talk first today about first I want you to tell us about the baby, how that is all going, and then we'll talk about how it's changed stuff on the farm. So tell us about this sweet little baby boy.
Yeah, so it's Levon. I know most
I'm
people say
sorry.
Levon. It's okay.
No, and I should have asked you that before. Thank you so much, Levon. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, this season's totally different. So, but the baby is good. He's 7 months old now. Growing really fast. He can crawl and he thinks he can walk. So he
Oh boy.
is falling a lot and hitting his head, which is hard when, the farm is not necessarily the most baby-proof place to be. But he's figuring out how to fall the right way now. Yeah. So, and he's very active. So he does not like to be sitting down for very long. Which makes it kind of challenging to like get any office work done. But yeah, I mean, we love him. I didn't know I could love something so much. So it's definitely like changed our lives. And it's really exciting to just see him like experience new things. Yeah, as he grows, and to be able to just kind of like share the farm with him kind of gives us a different perspective of why we're working so hard, you know?
So he's 7 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say he's crawling, which means, running is next. I understand. Go straight
Yeah.
to running. So do you guys have help on the farm for him, or how do you see that happening? I know that we have lots of young farmers that are our listeners and maybe that haven't had a baby yet and they're planning to, or they would love to hear what is your perspective on how you see that kind of unfolding on the farm.
Yeah. I mean, we're really grateful that we do have help as far as childcare goes. So my mom, I'm an only child, so this is her only grandchild. So
Oh
she's
boy.
like fully committed to, to helping with the baby as much as she can. So she is here 2.5 days, and then we have one of our farm workers actually babysits another like for a day and a half. Um, and so typically right now I would be working 6 days a week. But what's happening this season is I'm off on Saturdays completely, like with him. So we actually have been doing swimming lessons on Saturdays, which has been totally different for me not to be like working that much. And then Fridays is my day to kind of like bring him into the office to work. It's like right now, he doesn't really have much independent time, so I don't really get a lot done. But the goal is to sort of integrate him into farm life. So we're working on like how long he can be out here. At this point, it's like I come out in the morning and I'm available for like problem solving or planning, like questions, just things like that. And then typically by lunchtime, he's like ready to not be in the office. So I pretty much am here kind of for a half day. So we'll go in and take a nap, and then Friday evenings, usually we hang out with the crew and have like happy hour and do tacos and stuff. So, which hasn't actually been happening as much this year. We had like probably a 6-week period where it wasn't happening, just because we had other things going on. And so he can't be out in the barn like all day for work and then hang out like afterwards. So which actually I don't really want to either. So it's like I kind of have learned a lot about myself and like the boundaries where I'm like, yeah, that actually was like a really long day to be like in that space. Um,
So,
so
I mean, would imagine, I understand what you're saying. It's like you pushing the pedal to the metal 6 days a week, long days, which didn't seem bad at all, did it? But now that you have a little guy in tow,
mhm.
it just makes it really aware of just how much work that was, right? So I'm
Yeah.
really curious when you bring him in the office on Fridays. So he's not mobile yet, right? So I guess does he kind of just hang out there in the office with you and you try to kind of push some paper around and do a little book work? Is that what your goal is?
Yeah, like I can't really like focus and like do projects. It kind of is just
Yeah.
like helping plan, like being there to answer questions and like maybe if he takes a nap in the morning, which he's been napping less now, um, being able to get something done for he's kind of a power napper. So it's like, and if he goes down for a nap, I'm like, I know that I have like 40 minutes. And then that's like, so it actually has really like forced me to be efficient with the time that I do have. So, when I came back from maternity leave, so I was off for 8 weeks. I had a C-section, and was off for 8 weeks. And while I was off, our farm manager also had a baby two
Oh,
weeks
wow.
after me. So this spring was a very interesting spring. Just like seeing what the farm could handle, which I mean, the team did an amazing job. I took all winter kind of like to there's an Evernote like notebook called Gretel's Brain, and it was like everything that I could think of like how I made specific decisions or like what systems I used in order to like create the availability and like answer people's questions. We built an inventory system, so it was kind of like here's the pages I use in the inventory system because once we started talking about maternity leave, they were like, well, how do I think all that information is just in your head. And I was like, well, it's not like it's in these systems that we've built, but it just was kind of like showing people how to utilize the information and kind of like get that, it does take someone like 2 or 3 years before they can kind of like walk through the field and say like that equals 10 bunches or something, especially
Right.
because we project out 3 weeks ahead of time. So being able to say like this is going to be available next week and then the following week and then the following week like is pretty challenging.
Yeah.
And so we started in the fall kind of like I was training Julia, one of my office ladies, just to like how she's kind of a hybrid. She was a barn crew, like a harvester 1 year. And she does all our pictures for like cataloging and stuff. So she knows all the varieties. So she's who I taught to like kind of walk through the fields and sort of like what I'm looking for and how I make the availability. Um, yeah, so a lot of my duties that got divvied out while I was on maternity leave, when I came back, I was kind of like, okay, we need to reassess like what am I taking back and
Right.
what is like staying delegated to other people
Right.
because I can't take on everything that I used to do.
Right.
And it
Well,
was
kind of,
really interesting to like to create a manual for my job, like my own job was like really challenging. I'm like, how do I actually make those decisions? Like how do I actually come to the conclusion that yes, like a florist who comes to pick up who wants to shop out of the cooler, like that is actually available and it's not already sold if we're not done
right.
pulling the orders,
Right.
just like things like that of like how do we decide, yeah, what's the decision tree basically that goes into like figuring those things out.
I think most of us have to be forced to make SOPs, standard operation
Uh-huh.
procedures, and to get it done in a way that really we've embarked on that in the last year at the Gardener's Workshop and creating files of short videos of this is how you do this job. This is
Mhm.
why you do that job.
Yeah.
For not so much just here on the farm, but in all parts of our business so that, you can bring a new employee in and say, here's the file of the duties that you're starting out with. Sit down and, get your deal. So that is really, really interesting. So moving forward, you do see your role changing on the farm.
Oh yeah.
What, yeah,
Yeah.
it has
Yeah.
to, right?
And I think when you become a farmer, it's because you like to do the thing, right?
Right,
And then as the business grows, you're less like hands like in the
right.
dirt, basically, and more. I read the like entree leadership book, and he talks about like working on the business instead of working in the
Yep.
business. And it's like for us farmers, we get into this because we like to work in the business. Like that's what we like to do. Like even now when the barn crew is like, we need backup out here making bouquets, I'm like, I gotta go. Flowers need me. Like, see you later, office work. Like I'm out of
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So it's like it's nice for me when I am like needed in that way to just be like, I gotta go out there. Like I came back to work the week before Mother's Day. Um,
Oh,
kind of like perfect timing for a farm baby, as far as for us, because Mother's Day is our busiest week um of flower sales. So which I definitely like did too much and then was like really sore and tired for a couple weeks after that.
right.
Even like Pam, one of our office ladies, was just like, I see you out there pulling those carts and lifting those buckets. Like, would you please like let somebody else do that? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I know, but it feels good to like be doing something, you know?
Right. Well,
So
Gretel,
yeah.
I skipped right over in the beginning. Look, by chance, if there's someone listening here that might not be familiar with you and your farm, tell us the name of your farm, where you are, and let's hear the number. The last time I talked to you and Steve, you thought you had 17 houses, but Steve said, no, we have 18. And I can't remember what we settled on. So maybe you can bring us up to date on how many houses you have now and tell us a little bit about your business, what y'all do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't even realize didn't do the introduction. So,
Yeah. Yep. That's what friends do.
yeah, just hop right into it. So I'm Gretel Adams from Sunny Meadows Flower Farm. We're in Columbus, Ohio. We have a lot of greenhouse structures, both heated and unheated. We're at 18, but we're putting up another one that we just bought at an auction. So it'll be 19 going into this winter. And the class that we teach with Lisa is called Growing Cut Flowers in Hoops and Greenhouses.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Cut flower crops in hoop and greenhouses. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's it.
Gotta get the semantics totally correct. Yes. So it's just about all the things that we've learned over the years. And like I was saying with Mother's Day, that's our biggest week of the year. And so having heated structures is like what makes that possible. Because you can have tulips in the field, but for us, having heat means we can have stock and snaps and freesia and ornithogalum and a lot of things that kind of like support those tulips for the volume. So okay, so we're zone 6A and we currently have 25 employees. We're first generation farmers, so it started out just Steve and I on a quarter acre, and we had pigs and ducks and chickens and a veggie CSA and everything. And yeah, have built the business. It's now been 17 years, which is crazy to think that it's been that long.
You look 17, Gretel.
Oh, thank you. I don't feel that way, but thank you. Yeah, so the business has really changed over the years, and yeah, we're grateful that we've like built a great team. And for us, the greenhouses were definitely a part of that. Being able to have winter hours meant like employee retention, and being able to like have the same folks come back makes a huge difference in the efficiency of the farm, and the family culture too.
So you're adding a 19th house. So that's kind of what's new on the farm besides that little baby boy
Yeah.
this year. And so since you brought up houses, let's talk about that just a little bit. So the course that Gretel and Steve both teach with us, growing cut flower crops in hoop and greenhouses, is what we kind of consider the icing on the cake for our flower farming series because Gretel, I never really thought about until we started talking to you guys about doing this, that not only are houses great for season extension, but for y'all, you wanted to have more year-round employable hours to retain the good workers that you were training so they didn't leave in the winter and go get a job somewhere else and never come back. So I want to talk about a couple things, especially like if somebody, I don't have any houses. You've mentioned heat a couple of times, but not all your houses are heated. Tell us just very briefly, there are different kinds of houses. And this is one of the things that you walk people through in your courses, where you should put a house, where you shouldn't put a house, and what kind of house for your region, all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're all high tunnels. We don't do any like low tunnel structures. And some of them are heated, which we still minimally heat. They're only heated to about 50, 55 degrees, some of them 45, but depending on the crop that's in there. And that's basically just to keep the plants, so that it doesn't freeze in there.
Right.
And they're growing really low and slow through the winter. So we're not like heating them to 70 degrees or anything to like keep up production. We're also not adding lights either. So like as far as the input goes, just trying to figure out like what we can do with that like minimal input. So the structures, we have a mix of we have two like gutter connect structures, which is where like there's multiple bays in one structure. And that was basically just because of the utilities that were available, like the gas line that we had run. We were kind of like, oh, we could have a big one and have it all be one space instead of the like ground to ground. So
right.
we've got a huge mix. A lot of them have come used from auctions. And, once we knew what we were doing with new ones, then we started seeing like farms going out of business and these auctions happening. And so understanding how to like put one up first before you decide to like tear one down and put it up,
Right.
figuring out the like process of that. But that has really helped like us expand without as much cost in the structures. But the one big gutter connect, we did refinance our house to put it up. So like,
Right.
there are some that are more expensive than others, but we started with just like a farm tech, Quonset, like high tunnel. And that's what multiple of them are. We've got some that were poles that were bent by Amish folks, 3-season structures. Yeah, we kind of have a little bit of everything. So we cover all that.
So in the course, and so the course comes available, the enrollment opens November 13th, which is in a few weeks. And I'm sure Jesse will put in the show notes a link directly to your page so people can read your syllabus. Your syllabus is just basically the table of contents, y'all. And so Steve and Gretel, we've known each other probably for about 10 years, and I've watched them grow from, because y'all do you still field grow, right? I mean, last year, yeah, okay. So they've just been steadily building their business. And as you can tell, talking to Gretel, she's very system focused. I mean, how do they know they can heat those houses and make money? Because Gretel's done the math. Gretel knows what's going to happen. And that's taken years, right, for y'all to get there. And so what I really loved about your course is somebody like me that's never had a house can really, y'all start at the basics and just take people through what you should get, where you should get it, where you should put it. And then the last session, the last class, which is the one that nobody wants to ever need, is the pest and disease issue, which I think I've heard you talk about how you tell people that that's the class that you're going to come back to when you need it, right? It's not really something you're going to take in all at one time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes by the time we like get there, because week 5 is talking about like greenhouse management, like all the things that you need to do in order to have a greenhouse, like sanitize, ventilate, like that kind of stuff. And then we get to week 6 and we talk about all the pests and diseases that we've experienced. And people are kind of like, wow, is it even worth it? And I'm like, you're not going to have all these things happen to you at once. Like, this is just
Right,
like what has happened to us over the years. And just
right.
like knowing what to watch for, like we didn't know about aphids being an issue on anemones and ranunculus until the first year that they like exploded in there. And it got to a point of like we were throwing stuff out and, or botrytis or something. So the idea is like if you have an awareness of like that this might be an issue, then you can keep your eye out for it before it gets like to that point. So we also talk about scouting, using beneficial insects. So, which are things that we've implemented to kind of like help control the population of insects and also like, yeah, keep that disease pressure under like a specific
Right.
threshold. So you're not like, losing crops.
And I've talked about that our courses now, many of them are time stamped, which means that they're keyword searchable. That means you can go in and type in the word tulip, and all the places that tulip is mentioned in that course comes up, so you know where to go to find that, right? I see that in your course, that keyword searchability is huge for people to be facing a problem today, something that they have a question, how they can go in and keyword search that and find it, because now the frequently asked questions are also keyword searched, and there's so much rich information in there, right? I mean, there's hundreds of questions in there. So Gretel, do you remember what the 6 different classes are? I've got them pulled up here. Do you want me to tell you I'll say what they are, and then you just give us a little rundown on what that class is all it covers? So, class 1 is structure, types, location, deconstruction, and construction.
Yeah. I mean, so that one is kind of like what I was talking about, the different kinds of structures that you can use. And it also shows you some footage of where not to put a house, which we learned, we had to put in some drainage, and we've lost a house to the weight of snow. So just like, things to think about when you're choosing what type works best for you.
And then in class 2, it's creating a successful plan of action, like crop planning, sales outlets, seed starting.
Yeah. And then there's also there is a bonus video about enterprise budgets, which is kind of like, the next level part of it, but just making sure that you're putting the best crop, since it is the most expensive real estate, so I think the first year when we had houses, we put sunflowers and zinnias in there, which are definitely not the like
Right.
not the most profitable things. So we share some of that information of just like things that we found that are worth it, based on, yeah, the enterprise budgets that we do.
And then class 3 is spring blooms for both heated and unheated production.
Yeah, so that's like what everybody wants to learn about, the ranunculus and anemones. I feel like if you have structures and you're a flower farmer, that's typically where folks start at this point, just because ranunculus is such a popular crop. And that is also like talking about hitting the floral holidays in the spring, Easter and Mother's Day. So we kind of like give our greenhouse weeks. So if you're in a different zone, you may have to adjust it a little bit, one way or the other, depending on if you're hotter or colder than us.
Yeah, and I see listed here. So in that one, you also talk about snapdragon, stock, dusty miller, poppies, delphiniums, sweet peas, and others, just to mention some others. So then we come to class 4, which is blooms for summer and fall.
Yeah, so we grow a ton of Lisianthus. So we talk a lot about Lisianthus. But there's also other things included in there, like mums and cabbage, things that we have post frost. So we typically have flowers March through Thanksgiving. We try to have flowers through Thanksgiving. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we're done the week before Thanksgiving, unfortunately, just kind of based on how things bloom out. but just thinking about what you can have post frost. So for us, we usually hit spring really hard because of the floral holidays, as far as like the number of beds we dedicate to that kind of production. And some of that stuff is starting to get planted now. So, these fall summer crops, you have to kind of take into consideration like what beds you need to leave open so that you can start planting your first like ranunculus and anemones too.
And so I see in here that you also in that summer and fall talk about eucalyptus. You mentioned mums, dahlias, and even begonias. So yeah, there's just a lot of variety that you can, because, don't you find, Dave and I were just talking about this, the more inventory you have to offer, you sell more to individual customers, right? They just buy more. All right. So week 5 is caring for the plant's environment. And I think this is the one that this in itself could be a whole course, right? I mean, this is really the information that you don't want to screw up on this going in, or you can really pay the price. So that's reducing humidity and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, so talking about ventilation, like if you have roll-up sides or, louver fans, if it is something that has electric ran to it, and yeah, and sanitation, bed prep, things like that. Just the things that we've found work best for our plant health.
And I see here you also talk about cover cropping, resting beds, rotation. I mean, just all the things. There's so many moving parts, right? I mean, amazing. All right. So class 6, which you already alluded to, pest, disease, and soil management.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of go through crop by crop and talk about what are the biggest pests that we have for those specific crops. So that also is a way like that it kind of is searchable of like, if you're going to grow Dusty Miller, then thinking about, it's like Phytophthora can be an issue. So yeah, that's one of the things that we try to like make sure that we rotate beds just so that we're not putting it back in the same bed. So that's another reason why we kind of increased the number of houses that we have, was because we were growing so much Lisianthus and having problems with Fusarium, and like needing another house where it was kind of like, okay, well, if we're going to keep growing this much, then there needs to be another space where we can rotate these beds. And so if you're someone who just has one structure, kind of thinking about rotating things through the beds, or if you're doing half beds or whatever, like just making sure that you're switching where things are, because you can like build up disease. So for us, what we found is like when it's a new house and that's like fresh soil, especially if it was a field before, it's getting like it's getting leached out when the rain happens, and like maybe getting cover cropped or getting compost put down, those kinds of things. Whereas the greenhouse is more of a science, like you have total control over what is happening in there. Yeah, and some plants need more or less water at specific times, and like dealing with humidity. For us, we're one of the cloudiest cities, like we're in the top 5 cloudiest cities. So that also comes into consideration with like, dealing with those kinds of things of like, yeah, we're not sunny for a while, then that's more apt that diseases are going to happen.
I think that's a great point that you just brought up. That is what people really need to think about. It sounds really kind of interesting to say you're in control of everything, but what that means is if you don't provide it, they're not going to get it. They're not out in the open. They're not going to get rain. They're not, you know what I mean? It's also a great place for, as I've heard you speak up in the past, it's like pests. It takes a couple years before you really start having those challenges, because that stuff happens over time, right? So your course, it will be available at mid-November we're in 2023. And I just think that getting you guys experience and wisdom into a course is pretty phenomenal for opportunity for people. And it has been said, and I agree because I've watched the course, that your crop rotation and your crop planning is even beneficial to people that aren't growing in houses. I mean,
Mhm.
it's definitely beneficial for that. Um, so Gretel, I loved hearing about your new baby and how that's going to kind of change. I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of affects your responsibilities and the role that you play there on the farm. And I'm sure Steve is just a doting father.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we love him so much. It's yeah, we're also in the process of, it also has changed our priorities. So something else that's happened is we are actually moving off the farm, which is
Are you really?
that we didn't think would happen. But we are losing access to the place that we rent, which is 16 acres. That's where our field production is. So he had to give us a 2-year warning. So this was our 2-year warning. So next year will kind of be like moving year. And so, yeah, we found a place that we were just looking for land to buy, but we found a place that has a house on it that's in a better school district. And so now that is a priority.
How
Yeah.
things change, Gretel. It's like I want to say to new flower farmers, you think you know where you're going, but it
Mhm.
doesn't always work that way. I mean,
Yeah.
honest to goodness, do you think I ever imagined I'd be doing all these different things that I'm doing now? It's all based on flower farming. I had to
Yeah.
flower farm for 20 years
Yeah.
to get here, but I mean, it's just so exciting to me. So, oh gosh, I didn't know this. So, have y'all bought it yet, or are you in the process? Or
We close in a couple weeks. Yeah. And then, so this winter we'll be moving into the new place. So it would definitely be an adjustment. I mean, our house will become H2A housing.
yeah,
And yeah, just like not, but part of the farm will be there too. Like once we move everything over there, all our
right,
field production. So
right,
it won't be totally off farm, but it'll be off this farm, which we've been here for 17 years, which is longer than I've ever lived anywhere. So,
So,
yeah,
how far is that from your current home farm?
it's 18 minutes. So that's one of the challenges of being a city farm is like, especially because Columbus is growing so fast, everything was zoned for development like around us. And places we were looking at were anywhere from 38 to like 52 minutes away. And I was like, when we've lived on the farm for this long, I don't want an hour commute. Like, I don't
Right,
want to drive that far. And so this place came up and it was an estate sale. So it all worked out. And yeah, it's really
great,
crazy all happening so fast. But it'll be good for the long term like
yeah,
security of the farm because we were on rented land and
right,
we always knew that that was a possibility of losing
right.
access. We
And
just
Gretel, I think I can't remember the details. The similar thing kind of happened to Jenny Love. She had been on leased land. It was under a conservation, if I'm remembering that right. But
Mhm.
something happened, and then she felt that little bit of threat too. And so I think it's been 2 or 3 years now. She actually owns all the land that she farms on now. And
Mhm.
when you start out, you don't always get to start out on land that you own. I
Mhm.
mean, I never dreamed that I'm in the middle of the city. We never dreamed that the last large parcel that was attached to our farm, which we were told could never be subdivided for us to get a piece of it, it happened that we were able to do that. And I
Mhm.
never dreamed that that would happen. So you just don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. Well, I'm really excited for you guys. And I guess that qualifies for my question on what's new on the farm. Well, there's the bomb you just dropped.
Yeah.
That is just really exciting. And so we're just really happy to have you guys as part of our instructors. I mean, your teacher hearts, I know that y'all love giving back because you felt like so many gave to you. I feel that same way. And we love keeping our courses very affordable so that newbies can just come in and get the tools that they need, right?
Mhm.
So, well, Gretel, how exciting. We're really, really happy for you guys. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't wait for your next wave of students to come in and, for them to be able to use this in a new way. We've, changed our courses a little bit to create them as reference tools that people can go in and not feel like they have to just sit down and watch them. Now they can listen to them as podcasts on the phone app. They can go in and find what they need when they need it. And we're super excited. So thanks for joining me here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's fun to be a part of it.
All right, friends, wrapping up another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. And until we meet again, ciao.